Hey gamers, Maniac here at GameAccess.net talking about a new Tales from IT. This is a story that's a bit more personal to me because it was a story where I saved Christmas. This is not so much an IT story I was paid for, but this was an IT story, at least I consider an IT story nevertheless. Let me take you back to Christmas Eve. My girlfriend and I were celebrating Christmas with her family. We were sitting around her living room. We were watching It's a Wonderful Life on television. NBC broadcasts it every Christmas Eve and Christmas morning. So that's what we were essentially doing. And that year, this was, I think, 2 Christmases ago. That year, they decided that they were going to buy all new smartphones. Everybody in the family, and it was my girlfriend's mother, my girlfriend's father, and my girlfriend's sister, all got new smartphones for Christmas. Now, I got to give a bit of background for everybody that for what their smartphone preferences were. Just really quick. My girlfriend had Samsung Android phones up to that point, nothing but that because they were really cheap. And that's really the only reason she had them. But she did use iPod Touches. And she really liked the iPod Touches and absolutely detested her Samsung smartphones. She's never had a Samsung smartphone that actually worked ever. It's never happened. And they'd always have different issues with them. So she was very much looking forward to finally getting her first iPhone. Her sister was using, I think, an iPhone 4S at the time and had decided that she was going to switch over to Android. Her father was Android exclusive. He only used Android smartphones. So he was going from an Android smartphone to a newer Android smartphone. I think they were planning on upgrading to an LG model, but I couldn't remember. It might have been the G4. Her mother was also was a longtime iPhone user. I think she also was using iPhone 4S, and her plan was to upgrade to a newer version iPhone. I think the most recent version was the iPhone 6. So we've got 2 Android users and 2 iPhone users that we're going to be switching over to. We had one iPhone user that was going to switch to an Android, one Android user that was going to switch to an iPhone, and 2 people that were going to keep their own platforms. So keep that in mind. Now, when I said my girlfriend was a iPod Touch user, that meant she had an iTunes account already. She used a Mac, so she already had iTunes installed on her computer, and they both were synced up to the cloud. So a lot of her data was a lot of the work that it would take to transfer over data from her iPod Touch to a new iPhone was mostly already done. Now, for those of you who don't know how to transfer data between an iPhone to a new iPhone or an iPod to an iPhone, basically, if you want to do that, it's actually really easy, but you need to know the process. Essentially, what you have to do is you need to have iTunes installed on a computer or a Mac, a PC or a Mac, and have your iTunes account, the same iTunes account, logged in on both devices. The first time you connect your device to your PC or your Mac, iTunes will pop up and say, "Hi, this is a new device. Would you like me to back it up?" This also will normally happen when you wanted to sync your music. In the old days, basically, people would already have music on their PCs or their Macs, and they'd want to sync them to their iPods or their iPhones. And so in the process of doing the sync, the iTunes would do a system backup also. So it would transfer the files and your apps and your music and everything, but it would also do a backup at the same time. And so that every time you reconnected your device henceforth, iTunes would take another backup automatically. You'd have to intentionally disable that backup procedure by default to miss out on it. So my girlfriend was using the iPod Touch up to that point. She already had iTunes on it, and she kind of had an idea that she was going to be upgrading to an iPhone at some point because she just hated her Samsung phone so much. And so essentially what she did was she and I I guess we kind of just copied all of her calendar information, her schedule, and all of her contact information onto her iPod Touch from her, just copied it straight over from her iPod Touch onto her iPod Touch, so that when the time came, if she was to upgrade to an iPhone, it would be easier to do that process. And I recommend doing that. If you have if you use an iPod Touch and you're planning on getting an iPhone, Copy your contacts, store your contacts, phone numbers. Those all will transfer over. Her mother had her had an an iPhone for quite a while, and she had accumulated quite a lot of data in there. But she did have a computer that she had previously backed up to. She was using her husband's PC laptop to back up at least one time previously. So we did have a computer that we could connect to, at least to do a backup for that particular device. So essentially, what I decided to do was work all the procedures at the same time, and if I came across any errors, to focus on that, because I essentially had four smartphones that I had to do total data recoveries on Christmas Eve and then activate them. So my Christmas Eve was going to be kind of busy. So her girlfriend's father, my girlfriend's father, you really does know Android. He's a really smart guy with Android. He is computer savvy. Doesn't really know Mac. Doesn't really know at least newer Mac. Doesn't really know iPhone, but he knows Android, and he knows the bits and pieces of how Android works. All he had to do while I was working on backing up his wife and one of his daughters' iTunes data, he simply took apart his old smartphone, removed the micro SD card from it, and the SIM card, and maybe the SIM card. I don't know for sure, but he might have removed the SIM card as well. Took apart his new phone, put the new SIM card and the micro SD card into it, and then called Verizon to activate the phone. He was done in about 3 minutes. But he had his data recovered, and that was the end of it. So his phone worked. He had most of his data recovered, and he went on his merry way, learning how his new LG was faster than his old one. So meanwhile, I was in the process of basically trying my best to back up data. Now, I had to inform my girlfriend's sister, your data is not transferable. Like, I phone to Android data, while in some cases you might be able to re-download apps that are compatible with both devices. I can't just simply take all the music that you purchased and the apps that you've purchased on your iPhone and then immediately get discounts or get them for free on the... I just can't do that, I told her. And she said, no, that's fine. I totally understand that would happen when I was to upgrade to the Droid, or when I was going to transfer to an Android. So all she wanted was an Android that could run some of the same programs that her iPhone could run, and she just wanted the phone to work. So after that, I decided, okay, well, the first thing I did was I decided to get a recent backup of my girlfriend's iPod, which was still using iOS 4. I upgraded the operating system on both of the new iPhone 6s. The reason why is because, particularly, this was an issue with her mother's phone. Because her mother was upgraded to the most recent version of iOS, even though it was an iPhone 4S, you can't do a data recovery if your device, even if it's older, is using a newer version of iOS than the new device that you want to connect to. You have to make sure that they're at least version compatible, or that the device that you're transferring the data to is using a newer version of iOS, or the same version of iOS as what's on the backup. So keep that in mind. Like I said, my girlfriend was still using iOS 4 because that was the newest version of iOS that was compatible with that version or that generation of iPod Touch. But that wasn't an issue because I can't remember what version. It might have been iOS 8. But that backup was compatible with iOS 8, so it wasn't an issue. Once I had her iPod Touch backed up, I immediately plugged in her new iPhone and started doing a data recovery on it using iTunes. Essentially what happens is that when you plug a new iPhone into into iTunes for the first time, what happens is that you get a little pop-up that says, "Hi, this is a new device. I have a couple of options here." Now, it used to be, at least in the older versions of iTunes, it would say, by default, "Do you want me to set you up as a new device?" There would be a second option that would be grayed out but selectable, that said, "Would you like me to install a backup I have for a similar device?" Like, let's say, would you like me to install your old iPod backup or your old iPhone backup into this, and essentially treat it as that device. Now, iTunes smartly does that by default, but that was recent. I can remember people losing a lot of data when they didn't know. People just click. That's all they did. People would just simply just click forward, and they'd set up their phone as a new device, or their new phone as a new device, even though they had an old one, and they would lose all their contacts. They would lose all their notes. They would lose their game progress when it wasn't cloud synced. They would lose a lot. And somehow I think Apple got wise to this and they realized, no, let's by default, let's enable restore the backup, which I think is a smart move. So I told it to recover for my girlfriend's new phone, I told it to recover her old iPod Touch backup, and it started loading the data. For my girlfriend's mother, for her iPhone, I came across an error, and I was told I have to upgrade the operating system on the new iPod on the new iPhone in order to do a data before I could even do a data recovery on it. So I was doing both of those at the same time. Meanwhile, my girlfriend's sister was having a huge problem getting her new getting her new Android just to work. It would not activate. There was a direct line that we could call on Verizon. It was an automated line that said, when you want to activate your phone, call this number and we will activate your phone. That's, under normal circumstances, not a big deal. But it was, because her old phone for some reason, and the activation line for some reason said, please disconnect your old SIM card from your from your old iPhone, and insert it into your new Android phone, and then it will immediately activate. Here's what Verizon didn't seem to realize. Even though the new Verizon Android phone that she had gotten had already had a SIM card in it, for some reason the activation line wanted her old one from her old phone to be brought into it. But her old SIM card was not compatible with the Android smartphone. It just wasn't. I think because the SIM card wasn't 4G compatible. I swear to you, I took out the old SIM card. I know how to remove the SIM cards from iPhones. I pulled the SIM card. I did exactly what the line said, and the phone would not activate. No matter how many times we pulled the SIM card or tested the SIM card, reset the phone, reset the activation line, it still said the same thing. Pull the old SIM card, put it into the new Android phone, and that will activate the phone. Well, it didn't work. It did not work. No matter how many times we tried it, it didn't work. My girlfriend's sister was in tears because not only at this point she was thinking to herself, not only has she lost all her data, she's lost all her progress, she'll have to do everything from scratch to set the phone. Her new phone doesn't even work. So that's just great. Eventually, somehow, I tricked the automated system, the automated Verizon activation system, to get me a live person. I don't know how I did it. I just all of a sudden must have spoke something or said something unusual into the line. Maybe it was a or an or so I don't know, something like that. But I actually got a real person on Christmas Eve. After waiting a couple of minutes, it wasn't that long a wait. I got an actual person on Christmas Eve. I explained to them what was happening, and they said, it's highly likely that the SIM card that was in the old iPhone is just not compatible with that. However, you said that I told them that there was a SIM card that shipped with the device. They transferred over her SIM data to the serial number that was on that new SIM card that she had gotten with the device. It took 20 to 25 minutes of waiting on Verizon's line while they activated the new SIM card. But the new SIM card did get activated, and we reset the Android phone, and it could make calls now. And I essentially saved Christmas because I am not kidding about this. Like I said, my girlfriend's sister was in tears, or on the brink of tears. Everybody thought, well, is the new phone broken? Is she going to be stuck with the old phone? Are we going to have to go to Verizon and get the phones exchanged? That we can't do that tomorrow because tomorrow's Christmas. We'll have to wait until at least Tuesday or like 3 or 4 days before she can use her new phone. There was a lot of concerns. And so here I was after about 25 minutes of work on the phone. And again, it wasn't too much of an issue for verification because I had her father there to do the verifications. And he trusts me with that kind of stuff. So whenever we needed information, like I said, I have the account holders here with me. So Verizon was willing to talk to me, but only after getting the AOKs from the two actual account holders, her mother, her father. and we did get this resolved. Meanwhile, I transferred over the data to my girlfriend's old iPod Touch data to her new iPhone and upgraded the operating system on her new iPhone. She did end up with some redundant contacts. I don't know why that happened, and there was an error or two that was read in iTunes, but it didn't seem to affect the phone. The data on the phone was fine, or even though we did get an error message or on iTunes, the phone's data was fine. It was all there. I think what caused the error might have had to have been the giant leap between a backup from iOS 4 to iOS 8, because when I did a straight iOS 8 device to an iOS 8 device backup to recovery, we didn't get any errors like that. My girlfriend's mother was the last phone that I could do the data. I did a data transfer on because it took the longest. Like I said, she had about 20 gigs of data on there, a lot to back up, a lot to recover, but no errors. It just took a while to do that. So yes, I'm the nerd that saved Christmas for an entire family. And I guess my girlfriend is certainly happy that she dates me occasionally. So that's why it helps to date a nerd at Christmas. You can get this stuff set up. I also have been known to build Legos for little kids. You know, I remember some extended cousins of my girlfriend. I think this was last Christmas. They got Legos and they asked me, could you build these Legos for me? And I'm like, okay. They were small units, so it didn't take more than 20 or 30 minutes to assemble them. But they were very happy about that too. So there are a couple of reasons why it helps to date a nerd at Christmas. I'll just tell you that. So hope you enjoyed this Tales from IT. I guess this is kind of a Christmas edition, Tales from IT, but this is my favorite. I've got at least one more story I want to tell you guys, so keep the comments coming and the likes coming and retweets coming. Till next time, guys, my name is Maniac with GameAccess.net. Take care, over and out.